Good evening. I'm Joe Miller, the Fire Commissioner. Tonight we're holding this Fire Board meeting at City Hall. I ask everyone to stand for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're here tonight to discuss the new ladder truck. The Fire Board resubmitted everything to the City Council. We went through everything again based on the recommendations made by Assistant Fire Commissioner from New York City, who we met with and gave us a lot of good information. We redid our specs, and we're at this point, we're here to talk about it with the members in the audience. So, who has a question? Roy?
Sure. How'd you know?
How did I know?
Okay, when you met with Jim Basile, who was at that meeting?
It was myself, Chief Kemmons, Teddy Reinhardt, who's on the committee, and Donna Gaden.
And Jim looked at the specs for the piers and looked and said, we need undercoating, we need a generator. I think it's a 10K.
Correct. I had sent him the specs, and he went through everything prior. And when we did meet, he went through all the additional things that, with his expertise, said this is what you should be doing. You should be having the undercoating. You should go up higher than where it was. You should be adding the generator on. You should be doing extended warranties, not a short one, but a long term. He goes, basically, you're going to have this truck for 20 years. You're short yourself by not having all these things into it. Even though the cost is a little bit more, it's going to benefit you in the long run.
Well, it's more than a little bit more. Mine? Yeah. That better? Yeah. I can't look at Joe then. All right. I'll move the mic over here. Joe, it was more than a little bit more, but I understand a lot of this had to do with the warranty. The warranty, I think, added
Correct.
Another 250.
Ted? I'll give the exact number. It's not just a warranty. There was all the additional things also. The generator, the Line X. It's over there, Ted. Which part of Ted? How much was the warranty adding?
We added around $50,000 extra with the warranties.
And
The
that gave us,
service warranties.
can you just explain the difference between a warranty and a service warranty?
Sure, the servicing, instead of the truck going to the garage, it goes out to the manufacturing company out in Islandia, and they do everything from oil changes to ladder PMs, the works. Instead of it being, if something breaks on the truck, then it would get serviced for that. So it's basic service, just like you take your car in for anything. That's what we added on top of what we already had.
Okay. But you say the warranty only, I'm sorry, it's a 5-year warranty now.
Correct.
Right? And it only added, Joe, you said 50?
He said 50,000.
Additional 50.
I think we're confusing two things, Roy and Teddy. There is a warranty and then a service contract. I think they're two separate things. So the truck has certain warranties, and then on top of it there is a service contract, like Teddy just said, for the normal routine maintenance of the vehicle for 5
Correct.
years.
Correct.
So the service contract was 50 or the warranty? That's where.
The service was an extra 50, and the extended chassis warranty and the extended body warranty were 28 and 39 each, respectively.
But that's each year.
No, it's the total price. If you look on the, I'm presuming you have that HGAC in front of you.
Yeah. And it says,
there's a number 5, so it's for the total.
but it clearly says here per year.
Right, but that's how it's read, is how they told us what it was. So they said that they added it for the 5 in it. I understand what you're saying. That's what I asked them the same question. I said, is it per year? Even though it says per year, the total is 5.
All right, I know if I were in a court of law, I would
No,
lose on that.
no, I
you
totally
know.
understand. I asked the same question.
Yeah, but they never gave you anything in writing that said otherwise.
I don't have it. I didn't ask for
Yeah.
anything in writing that
Okay,
says
I just,
separately.
because there's a big difference. We're talking about 70,000, about 70,000, if it's 70,000 total, or if it's 70,000 a year
Right,
over
no,
5 years.
I understand.
Really big difference. But I guess the biggest problem, and I'm speaking as I'm the city council member on the fire commission. And as a city council person, I have a problem with the money. I have always problem with the money because Long Beach is broke, completely broke, worse than broke. And it's a lot of money, and I understand, the need for equipment. I understand the need for safety. But by the same token, in what I call in the legal profession due diligence, to me, wasn't done because it was never put out to bid. We never hired a consultant. There are consultants that will do generic specs and then take the generic specs and put it out to bid. And, and I'm not saying if that was done, it won't come back with the exact same price and the exact same truck. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying from a due diligence point of view, I think I could not, in good conscience, go in front of the taxpayers and say, hey, let's spend $2 million, and we're not bidding it out, we're going on a contract. That's where I run into a problem. And you know what, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask my fellow city council members what their opinion is.
Sure. Do you want to get into the bidding process and the contracting? Just go ahead, get into that first. Just, Mr. Benno, before you give a question, Scott's just going to talk a little bit about the bidding process with the state.
So the way this truck and several of our other trucks and ambulances and other vehicles throughout the city and other services are purchased through a purchasing consortium. The city happens to be members of 2 of them, one of them being HGAC, and then there is one other, Sourcewell, I believe, is the other one that we're members of. Typically, based upon the research I've done, the vehicles and the accessories and extras are all bid through this consortium, and the prices have always seemed to be better. I just actually did some research with PL Custom today for the ambulance we're looking at, and PL Custom was rated the #1 ambulance dealer with the best prices by the consortium that would deal with that. So typically, the prices through the consortium are better than the bidding process because it's a national consortium and it's not a local bid. On top of it, the truck they're looking at and would like is manufactured by Pierce Manufacturing, probably the largest fire truck manufacturer in the country. And on top of that, there is only one vendor we can get that truck from. So even if we were to bid it, they're the only ones that are going to bid that truck.
That truck, but if you have a generic specifications, you could possibly get other trucks.
You could also buy a Kia, or you can buy a Mercedes.
But if I'm going to the train station, I don't need a Mercedes. Okay?
Right, but if you're hanging out a window of a 6-story building and your life's depending on somebody getting to you, you might want that
Come on, Scott.
Chevy.
You're gonna tell me that no other truck will save a person except this truck?
No, there are other trucks and
Yeah.
other manufacturers. Pierce happens to be one of the largest manufacturers, and you might be able to get a cheaper truck like you can get a cheaper car. But at the same time, you're not comparing apples to apples.
You never are. You never are. But you know what? You don't necessarily need to eat an apple if you're hungry, okay? I mean, I'm just asking, looking at it from a due diligence point of view, yes, I understand you look at this truck and you want this truck, but before asking the public to spend $2 million, I think the right thing to do is to ask other manufacturers, hey, given a generic specifications, what would you suggest? Could you match it? Listen, we have other trucks. We have Ferraris. We have, what is it, Seagrave. Seagrave, yeah. So, I mean, you can't tell me Pierce is the best truck, and we have these other trucks. There are other trucks, and I know they're engines. They're not the ladders.
Correct.
Okay, but there are different manufacturers for ladders.
There are.
That's all I'm saying. Listen, it might be, and I said this before, this might be the best deal we can get. This might be the perfect truck, but we haven't, all we've done is gone, as you say, gone to these particular people. There's only one vendor, and they specified this truck, and you know it. This is a truck specified particularly by Pierce. We went through this the other day. When it comes to a 1/4-inch specifications on certain things, only Pierce could meet these specifications. All I'm asking, for the sake of the public, for the sake of the taxpayer, that we give a shot to the other manufacturers.
Yes, Liz.
I'm just going to make a comparison or an analogy. When you say that you're going to get a generic truck, I'm going to
No, generic spec.
a generic spec.
Yeah.
I'm going to compare that to purchasing a wheelchair. There are 3 manufacturers within the country. I could order one chair, a generic chair, and I will.
It's not a generic specs, Liz. Generic specs.
Because every single piece on this chair is a line item, just like on the fire truck. If I get a generic spec, I'm going to wind up in a hospital because my ass is going to have a sore. Because it's not custom made to what I need. Just like the truck is being custom made to what every single resident taxpayer needs in order to be safe. Period.
You're basically saying, Liz, that no other truck
I am
of
basically-
any other...
Not basically, I am saying.
Yes. Okay. I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Remember, our committee spent months looking at different things and researching. They didn't just say, oh, we're going with this one truck. They went around and checked multiple trucks. They found which one they thought was best, and then started working with that to come to what we have right now as the spec. So it's not like they just said, oh, we're going Pierce, and that's it, and blinders for everything else. They did their due diligence, researching it, and what would be best for our community, for our residents, not just what's best or what costs the most. Unfortunately, you can't put price on lives. This is what they need. This is, as professionals doing their job, this is what they say they need to protect everyone. I trust them. Yes, Donna.
What I would ask is that you go through the process that you all went through at the last meeting so that the council members that are here can understand the process of how you came to that truck. And right now, you're just talking about the truck, but you're not telling them the process that you went through.
Ted?
Sure. Back in April or May-ish, City Garage said to us that it's time to start looking for a new truck. So we put together a committee of 2 chiefs, the current officers, as well as an external member who is in the company itself. We sat down, we brainstormed, we said, what do we want, what do we not want? Do we want a stick, which is a ladder truck that doesn't have a bucket? Do we want a tower ladder? Do we want a ladder tower? We went through all these things, and we decided that we wanted a mid-mount tower ladder tower, which is exactly the truck that we have now, or the one that we're proposing. We went through all the manufacturers. We looked at, all the different manufacturers that made these trucks itself, and we took into mind Long Beach. So we were looking at Seagrave, we were looking at KME, we were looking at all the other manufacturers. We went through everything, and it was determined that this truck, the Pierce, and could have been any other manufacturer, it is the shortest overall length with the still capabilities of a 100-foot ladder. So you could have gone with a Rosenbauer, for example, and that Rosenbauer, it's 42 feet long, the length of the truck itself, but you're sitting at 88 feet on the aerial device itself. So you get a 10-story building, you could pull up perfectly right in front of that building. You're not reaching those top 3 floors.
But that's the same for 14-story buildings that we're going to have now.
Well, sure, absolutely.
So, I mean,
There's a huge majority of these
But
of these buildings that are in town that we can get to the roof. There's going to be one odd apple that you can't get to it,
Teddy, give me 1 second.
Sure.
And Roy, answering to that, putting my other hat on, those taller buildings are designed differently. So you take our normal 7-story buildings on Shore Road, the 600 block of Shore Road, 700 block of Shore Road. Those buildings are all made out of wood. I always, not to joke about it, but I always say they're built to burn. We've had several fires in those buildings over the years, and we'll have more to come. The new 13, 14, 10-story buildings are all fireproof buildings. They're all sprinklered. They're all fire alarmed. They're made out of concrete. They're designed that the way the stairwells are designed, that people don't necessarily need to be rescued by a ladder truck, and the ladder truck doesn't need to get up to the top floor, like in Manhattan when you have a 100-story skyscraper. They're all designed differently for fire safety. So in a case of Long Beach, we have multiple buildings that are 7 stories tall that are made out of wood. And they're going to burn, and those are the people we need to get to in a 6th floor and a roof. In a little history, 1979, the building on Shore Road, 666 Shore Road, multiple residents, including my grandparents, were rescued by our bucket truck from their 5th floor balcony, or they would have perished in that fire. So, notwithstanding that, there are plenty of buildings that this truck needs to get to rescue people, that if we didn't have it, or if it didn't work, they would die in a fire.
Only this truck. There are no other trucks with 100-foot ladders.
I didn't say that.
Well, the criteria I heard was that it would be short enough and have a high enough ladder.
Sure, there are other trucks that have 100-foot aerial devices, but if you're going for overall length, to get that truck down a tight block, for instance, Shore Road, the West End, all those other blocks, it's the shortest truck on the market.
So Teddy, you did look at other manufacturers, and you felt
Correct.
that this truck was the best for the city.
Absolutely. It's the shortest in length physically by just under 6 feet.
It's 42 or 43?
Right now it's at 44 and a half, but our
44
current
and a half.
truck's at 49. Any other rear mount or mid mount ladder tower that's at 100 foot, you're looking at in the ballpark of 48 feet.
And I believe also, keep in mind too, that the original specs that we had on this truck, the committee worked hard to minimize the cost of the truck, knowing that the city is a...
But when you say the original specs, were there other specs besides the Pierce specs that we saw?
No, those are the original that was submitted
So
at
it
the
was-
1.7,
Yeah.
which was voted down at that time, or tabled. We met with the expert, we reviewed everything, and we're guided by his suggestions and added those in.
Okay. Now, this truck, in 2012, it was underwater.
Correct.
And then we...
And 2011, Irene also.
In Irene?
It's an 08.
How much water do you need to have this truck underwater?
Depends on where they went. If Broadway during Irene, there was a decent amount of water in it. The truck was out. It was out during Sandy, so
Well,
But
even if the
did
truck
we
is-
make a claim then after Irene?
we did.
And what did we get from?
No, sorry, after Sandy. It was after Sandy.
But what about Irene?
That
You
I'll
just
have
said
to
it was-
defer.
It wasn't me, so I don't know.
No current commissioners were here, were commissioner at the time, so,
So we made a claim after Sandy.
correct.
And what did we get for that?
We didn't meet the threshold to replace.
Right, which is 75%?
Right, I believe we got the original check from our insurance company for that was $115,000 for the repair of the vehicle.
And did we ever ask for more?
I don't believe the city garage has ever made a request.
Okay, because I was told in 2016, we asked for a supplemental claim. We put in a
That-
supplemental.
That could be very possible. A lot of the insurance claims are handled through the Corporation Counsel's office.
And at that time, they said that they denied it because they said it was normal wear and tear, which I don't understand. A truck that's supposed to last 20 years, and now this is a 2010 truck, right?
It's an 08, 2008.
I thought the Ferrara was a 2008.
It is,
It is, that's what we're talking about.
right.
This replacing the Ferrara.
Right, we're
Not
looking to
the
replace the
Secret.
2008.
Okay, all right. So at that point, now it's in 2016, it's an 8-year truck. Why, the normal wear and tear on an 8-year truck would make it almost, where it has to be replaced? This has been out of service now, on and off for 4 years, correct?
2 years out of the last 5.
Okay, and it's mostly the hydraulics and the electrical?
There's an array of things. The hydraulics, the electrical, air leaks. We've had the inverter placed a couple times. The turbo got replaced twice last year.
I'm sorry, the turbo, the engine?
The turbo on the engine itself
Right.
had to get replaced twice.
So when it was replaced the first time, it wasn't insured? I mean, it wasn't warranted?
It was not because we had to pay for it again. Oh, it was warranted, but it broke again. And then the outriggers on the truck itself, the things that hold the truck in place, they're failing. There's a hairline fracture on the actual ladder itself that we were told to monitor. If that goes, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm not saying it's in great shape. I'm just
Right, no,
trying to
it's-
figure
it's-
out why,
It's definitely, and I'm the furthest thing from a mechanic, but
Yeah,
being in the truck, you could tell there's something wrong with the truck.
uh-huh.
And even, if I'm going by the mechanic, the head diesel mechanic's telling us, hey, there's a lot of stuff wrong with the truck, I'm trusting his expertise on it as the guy that's running the garage and all the apparatus in the city to, go off of that and say, all right, yeah, there is something.
So is he the one that maintains the truck?
He is for certain things. Other things, it has to get sent out to one of the two other companies, either Neville or Hendrickson, to get more advanced things that need to be replaced.
And did either one of them look and say that the truck, did Hendrickson say the truck needs to be replaced?
Personally, I don't know the answer to that, but we've had many problems with it over at Neville, and they're saying, it's sat up at Neville,
Yeah.
who is one of the repair companies. It's sat up there for 9 months.
Yeah.
And
I'm
they
not
said,
saying it's in great shape.
Right.
Don't get that. I'm just trying to figure out, trying to determine why it had such a short life.
well, I mean, like anything else in the city, or even in your own homes, salt water does terrible damage to just about everything. So you can get, the best truck like we had. We didn't have any of the coatings on it, so that added wear and tear to the truck. Salt water. We live up in the Northeast. The roads aren't that great. There's salt on the ground for 5 months out of the year. That stuff gets kicked up in there. We try. I mean, if you look at it, it looks like a brand new, beautiful truck because we take such great care of it, because we have such great pride in it. But you go internally, again, I'm not a diesel mechanic or anything like that. There's problems with it all over the place because of the wear and tear that, the harsh winters in the East Coast give you. And we went through a hurricane. There was water up to the windows of the truck. Your car, they totaled it, like a week after Sandy,
Right.
We were beneficial where we were able to send it out. They were able to basically put a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. It's going to keep popping up. It's going to get worse. and we can keep sinking money into the truck, or we can go out, we can get a new one. It's going to be here, you know, in a year and a half, 2 years, and not have to worry about it anymore because it's what the people in the city need, you know? I'm not going to, you know, how are you going to expect a chief or something like that to look at a family? They're hanging out the 10th floor of the city, you know, one of the apartment buildings over here because the truck
Listen,
is having-
basically, you're saying that this is the only truck that can rescue people.
not saying that this is the
Well,
only truck.
that's what I'm hearing here.
But-
That you're looking
Roy,
at
under the
families.
specs that they've gone through and everything that they've done, this is the truck they believe is the best for us. That's it.
Like basically, like we said before, they tried to save the city as much money by cutting down on the equipment. We had it without a
Correct. We
generator.
didn't have a lot of the stuff that the expert had told us to add in the truck for the sheer fact of trying to save money. We were told by the rep that the prices were going to go up 5% before February, after February 31st. So we were, we crammed. There were late nights. We got everything done, trying to keep that 5% increase from happening, and hand it off to the city in a reasonable time that you guys weren't blindsided by it. And that got turned, got tabled. So that adds $100,000 to the bill right away on the 5%. And then we went into the meeting with Mr. Bazile, and he tacked on another good chunk of change, in stuff that we typically would have wanted in that truck, but we took out keeping in mind that money's tight. We all understand that. All of us live here. We get that. And it added another, chunk of change to it. That wasn't on us. We had alternatives to that. We got electric, battery-powered fans, which are cheaper than having the, $25,000 generator on it. We didn't put those coatings on the bottom of it, on the side of the truck, because that was an extra penny.
Was there coating on the bottom?
There was coatings on the bottom. We just
But
didn't
not
have
on
it
the
all the way
side.
up to the top. He wanted it up on the top. He wanted it in the cab, which, we found alternatives to it. But it was told to be added by somebody who was in charge of all the apparatus in the city of New York, so that you're going to add an extra penny to that. That's why we added everything. We had this truck set, ready to go. Here you go. We're trying to save you guys money, and it's been tabled, and it just keeps getting prolonged. They're going up another 7% starting May 1st. So the more we prolong it, the more money it's going to cost us in the long run.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I
Tim.
hear
It's costing
that.
the city a lot of money now with it.
It is.
still being repaired.
Yeah.
Mr. Bendo, you had a question?
Well, I think it might have just been answered about what was added to Celeste, sounds like the generator, the additional coating.
The generator, the additional coatings, extra servicing, and the extended warranty.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want, should I go up there or should I?
You could scream. Whatever you want to do.
I honestly, I don't think there's any doubt in any of our minds here that we need this truck, that we need a truck like this, just like this. Or for the people of our community, it really seems like we just keep going around in the circle, and the sticking point is the bid situation. It's, approving a $2 million price tag in front of the taxpayers without anything else to compare it to. You have to understand on our end.
Of course, we understand completely.
Can you all send this out for specs to certain time frame, say by X date, see what comes in? At least that way we can see if we get some other things, and that way we can cover the diligence piece.
Go ahead.
So that would mean a whole bid process. So we'd have to get our purchasing department to put together a set of bid specs. Would have to get advertised, put out the bid, give respondents a certain amount of time to respond, then have a bid opening, and then probably go through this exercise again, depending how many people bid. When we bought the new engines, if I can regress a little after Sandy, we did put them out to bid. The only two companies bid, Ferrara and Seagrave. And the Seagrave came in substantially higher than Ferrara, and it was actually the Ferrara engines that we wanted. And, I foresee a similar situation here. based upon, and generic specs are fine, Roy, but as Teddy's put forth, we want that shorter truck for our West End streets. So the spec we're going to write for what they want and need for Long Beach, we might not get another bidder, or the bidders are not going to be able to comply with the length of the truck, and it's going to set us back months.
Why would it be months, Scott? Why can't we get a consultant that knows this stuff?
Well, then you're going to have to pay the consultant.
If we save a couple of $100,000 and we pay a consultant a couple of thousand,
I don't see
worth
that
it.
happening.
Let him speak.
Yes, Brian.
All due respect, Mr. Lester, we don't need a consultant. We don't need the cost. I've got 40 years in July in this fire department. This is the third ladder truck I've spec. Okay? So I think I consider myself somewhat of a subject matter expert. I love the fact when you started reading off the tire spec last meeting. Do you understand that those Goodyear tires were a conscious decision by the committee and saved the department about 5 figures? Because if we took the Michelins they normally use, which would be better in a different area, it would be 5 figures more.
I asked at that time, and I was told that only Pierce could meet these specifications.
Yes, and there's no such thing as generic specifications. You go to
I
any...
don't, listen,
Let me explain,
I'm sorry.
sir.
Yes.
Let me talk, okay? If we wanted a KME, the specs would be geared towards a KME. We wanted a C grade, it would be geared towards that. What you should be asking is not about generic specs, is really why we chose this one. And it's not just about the shortness, it is. Not just the height, that was a criteria. I'll give you a perfect thing for the West End, okay? There is a tactic in a row of stores, which we call a taxpayer, where the bucket actually goes to the ground to use that 1,500 gallon per minute staying on it. Our current truck needs to be 55 feet away for that truck to hit ground. This one, 20, okay? Now, 55 feet on Park Avenue, we can go on the left lane well past the building. You don't have that space in the West End. So that was one criteria of why we chose this truck. Okay, it's not...
Which is valid. That's valid. But that can be in the
And it
specs.
is the only one that meets that criteria. Okay? It's not like, first of all, it's not going in my driveway. So
It's not what?
it's not going in my driveway, so it's not like I picked out the car that I wanted. So we sat down, like the captain said, and we worked on what criteria work best for the city of Long Beach. What are we lacking? What do we already have? That's how we chose the type of vehicle, and then once we had a type, we then went looking at the specs of all the manufacturers. And that's what led us to this exact vehicle.
That's what I asked before. Were there original specs? So what you're talking about were original specs. Shortage, we want something that we can hit the water at 20 feet. We want something with a 100-foot ladder. Those are original specs.
Those were the criteria that
All right,
we
well, that's
chose
what I'm asking.
Yes, those were the
Is that written down anywhere?
No, we had discussions. We met with the company, and like we currently have a rear mount ladder tower.
Yes.
And we said, look, we can go with a rear mount ladder tower again. Whoever makes the one we pick, whatever, we can go with a midship. And there are pros and cons for both types. The committee, along with meeting with the company, we decided to go with a midship, okay, based on the pros and cons list. Then, from that criteria, we said, okay, what do we want in that type of vehicle? And one of the things we wanted, as the captain said over and over again, at least a 100-foot ladder. We didn't want to go shorter than we are now because the buildings are getting larger in town. They're not getting smaller, okay? We wanted it short so that it would be maneuverable, okay? I'll tell you right now that we know that are narrow streets, but some of the new road construction in town is not good for fire trucks. It's old already, but on East Broadway, especially heading eastbound, there are those bump outs. Okay, are you aware of what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
We can't make a turn for the fire truck from Broadway, or at least the ladder truck from Broadway onto the boulevard to then get to Shore Road. We actually had to change our route, that we take Park Avenue to the boulevard to go straight down to Shore Road.
Let me ask you a question. When we just redid Edwards.
And that's
was
a
that-
problem, because the fire department wasn't consulted. Those bump outs are a severe problem.
The
So how
fire
did we
department
address?
wasn't consulted?
No, I don't think we were even consulted when they changed the hydrants.
On Edwards, Captain Reinhardt brought it to our attention. I reached out to Public Works. We gave them the dimensions of the vehicle for them to, when they design it. Unfortunately, some of the design is done to DOT specifications, and for the granting process and to receive the grant and the money, it has to be done to DOT specifications. Commissioner Miranda at the time took the measurements, the contract were given to the contractor. They made adjustments. I don't know if they're enough or what they
Well,
could
you
do.
just heard they're not enough.
Well, for the
that's-
current vehicle, that's part of the criteria that we used for this newer vehicle, with a shorter wheelbase, tighter turning. Okay, so to even imply that we didn't do due diligence and we just said, give me that expensive one, is incorrect. And I'm not saying that's what you're saying. What I'm saying is that this was a process that was followed, and we picked that particular brand vehicle based upon the criteria. Okay, so, hey, if Seagrave had made the vehicle that fit everything, then we'd be speccing a Seagrave now that would be expensive as well. So, not that we couldn't bring a consultant on, but that would just be time and money wasted.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I guess I'm gonna, this is gonna be more of a comment, about the process as a whole. So the information that was just conveyed here was not conveyed to the council before we voted. So, as a council, and I'm only just.
Well, let me just interrupt you real quick. That was conveyed in that slideshow. It was put in there.
So, as a council person, I feel I have two responsibilities. My one responsibility to you guys is to make sure you guys have the equipment you need to do your jobs. And I take that seriously. I mean, I'm not a firefighter now like you. I've had firefighter training in the Navy, because when a fire breaks out on a ship, there is no way to run. So I take it seriously. So the fact that you added the generator in, if you guys feel you need that, and the extra coating, if you agree with what Mr. Vasile said, I'm fine with that. But here's the problem with the process. Now, my other responsibility is to the taxpayers. That's my other responsibility. The impression that I came away with in this process is, so some of the paperwork we got said it was going to be an arrow, a Pierce arrow. Then other paperwork said it was an enforcer. Now it's a velocity. So that right there goes, okay. Again, this may have been a communication problem rather than a process problem, but the way it came to us is the way I have to act on that information. So I went, did a simple Google search based on you guys said you needed a short truck, I'm sorry, not the rear mount.
Mid-mount.
All that. I did a simple Google search and found lots of other companies that make the same product, same size truck that I found at least. So that to me then calls, not into question, but it seems like to me the impression became somebody decided this was the truck that was wanted and was trying to back us into that decision. That's the impression. That may not be correct, because again, we got information here now that we really didn't have before, details. So, so I think there was a communication issue, for one thing. guys should get a good truck. I agree with that entirely. And saving $100,000 over, if you split that out over 20 years, we're talking a negligible amount of money to make sure we get a better piece of equipment. So, at least that's the way I do it. My problem was wearing my taxpayer representation hat, is I wasn't convinced at that time that adequate due diligence had been done on it. Because like I said, some simple, I'm no expert in this, but some simple Google searches found there were other products out there that had length, height, ladder height, you know, and it didn't seem like they were considered. So from that perspective of having to represent how the taxpayers' money is spent, that called things into question. Now the other issue is, look, we're not the New York City Fire Department. New York City writes its own specs, okay? We're not New York City. We buy what? How often do we buy a truck? Every 10 years?
20
We buy a
years.
truck?
Each one gets replaced, hopefully 20 years.
Yes, you bought 3 ladder trucks, so, I mean, we don't buy trucks often. So I get, we're probably not experts, and this is, I've been hearing this for years about volunteer fire departments across Long Island, that they don't write their own specs, they go to a vendor, they say, this is basically what I need, the vendor writes the spec, and then, because now remember, we had asked for the spec the fire department put together to issue the vendors, and you told us there was no spec. And then at the working meeting, when we discussed it, you said, well, there is a spec, but it was written by the vendor. So, yes, I think I got the email where I asked you for the spec the city wrote, the vendors, and you said there wasn't one, and that was a true statement. The city didn't write one, but the vendor wrote one. So, and of course, when the vendor writes one, we're basically going to wind up with that vendor's product, because nobody else is going to bid on that when the vendor writes the spec for their product. So, from a novice's point of view, that seems like you're trying to we're being pigeonholed into a single piece of equipment. So again, when I have to wear that representative taxpayer hat, I have to question, is that proper due diligence? That doesn't mean it's not the right fire truck. That doesn't mean that at all. It just meant, was the process adequate to make sure, A, you're getting the piece of equipment you guys need, and B, the taxpayers' money is being well spent for that piece of equipment that you guys need. So I think that's where there was probably a disconnect, or the communication wasn't adequate to make sure that what you guys had done, your process, and how you got to where you are. And I think that it's not a secret, this current council is questioning a lot of things now across the city, because in past practices were, quite frankly, there was not a lot of due diligence done in this city, and we're in the financial mess we are now because of that. So we're trying to put mechanisms in place where we're assuring tax dollars being spent properly while we're buying the right things we need. So what I think happened was, again, I think there was some poor communication between the department and the information given to the council. That's the reason I think we showed up here tonight, was to try to, bring closure to this. I'm no fire truck expert. It's not my job to second guess you guys, but it is my job to, again, make sure the taxpayer dollars are being spent wisely. And they haven't in the past in the city. So, to some degree, I guess you guys could say you're a victim of our enhanced scrutiny of things. I get it. Probably haven't had to do that before, especially you're dealing with novices who are asking questions about stuff that you guys are the experts in. But, the way the system works is that's kind of your job, is
Okay.
So, and I think we can probably resolve that tonight, you know, like I said.
Well, have we answered then your questions? Do you feel?
Did you all go, did you discuss the last time that you went to other fire stations?
Yes.
Talk about that, to look at the trucks at other fire departments, to see how those trucks by those vendors were compared to what you bought.
Teddy?
Just, I don't know if there was a full disconnect, but all the questions that got sent out to Commissioner Miller, your additional questions, they were all answered, returned, and forwarded to you guys. And then on top of that, like Ms. Gaden just said, the questions that I'm about to answer were in that PowerPoint. I just want to let you guys know that, you know, we went to multiple firehouses, we went to multiple different departments that have both the truck that we want and other trucks, and we picked their brains for hours, you know, everything down to, you know, why do you have a light in this place? Or, you know, why do you have the air conditioning head in this place? What speakers do you have in the truck? So we picked apart everything down to, you know, the most minute. One of the arguments we had was about lights, you know, where to put lights. So we went through this thing, you know, with a fine comb, and we made sure that this truck was the best for both the residents, for our company, you know, for all the equipment that we carry, while having a financial, you know, having finances in mind. And that's, you know, so just to say that we didn't go any other places, or, you know, that there was a disconnect between everything. We laid that out. The PowerPoint was almost 50 pages, you know. Back in school, that was horrible, you know. There was everything detailed down to the, you know, like I said, down to the tires and everything. We went through it. You know, we asked Point Lookout why they like their truck. What don't they like about their truck? We went up to Roslyn Fire Department. They said that they got the Detroit diesel and they hated it. You know, they had to regen it every time. So we took all of these things and put them in mind when it came to building our trucks. You know, this truck has been out for almost 5 years now. So any little bit of, you know, questions that the other departments had, that they said, oh, well, we don't like the roll-up doors, you know, because they don't work as well for the long run. We went and said, have you fixed the roll-up doors? You know, they had on the back step of the truck, they have a ladder to climb up into the bucket. There was a flimsy bucket, you know, flimsy ladder. We said to them, hey, you know, we want something beefier. They said, oh, well, you know, there's other departments that have come to us, so we got the better ladder to offer. So to say that we didn't, you know, go through everything is completely false. We went through everything.
But all this was relayed in the PowerPoint. All of this was answered in the questions that were asked multiple times. And we went back and forth with the council, doing our best to answer all of them. But all this information has been put out to you guys.
Joe, I'm sorry, but
Is that,
yeah.
to piggyback on what John said, sometimes the best communication is the communication that you're having right now. That you can explain what it is versus seeing it in writing, them not understanding, you're not understanding. So when we get to the ambulance, this is what you need to do for the ambulance. So that you are talking, that they understand versus us continuing to put things in writing. So that we can move forward one way or the other. And I think this tonight has been very helpful. That's why I asked if we have the council here so we can all talk about it.
And again, this goes back to this was probably a lot of this was communication. So the PowerPoint, you referenced, is a good example of, that was in response to a lot of questions.
Sure.
The information that we were given initially for the resolution was basically, this is what we want, this is the cost. Okay? We didn't have any of that who, what, where, when, and why. That only came out after I spent a good 35 hours doing my Google searches and researches and talking to people to develop those questions, right? So the simple fact is, because I'm not an expert at this, it would have been more helpful if that information had been conveyed up front. So I didn't have to spend 35 hours any of the amplifying information at that point. So I think that's where, if that was at step one, if we had a conversation like we're having right now, right there, we would have been done. And, and then we would have voted, and whoever liked the truck, didn't like the truck, would have voted accordingly. So I think there was a communication problem. I think it's, again, I think a little bit of it is trying to get the people used to maybe a little bit more of an enhanced process. When the council has to vote now on something, because you guys are going to need to buy, right? You need an ambulance.
Yep.
Probably the pumper truck for the pay guys was in the capital plan 2 years ago to be replaced. You're talking about the other last truck.
That was from prior to.
So we're gonna be going through this again over the next few years. So it would be good to get kind of in a groove where we don't have we'll call this one a learning experience, I guess, and make sure we get it right next time.
And show the documenting
Because again, the intent is not to somehow say you guys can't have a shiny new toy or whatever. No, that's not the case. If you guys need it, you guys need to get it.
It's not a shiny new toy, just so you know. It's a life-saving piece of equipment. I just wanted to,
No, I but that's what some of the people out there.
oh, sure, it's gonna,
That's not what we're.
They don't think of the fact that somebody's got to get in that bucket and go off.
Don't bring that up.
right, okay.
So what do they want exactly?
What does it mean if there's
To do this for every big budget item.
For now on. Okay.
They don't think about that because hopefully they never have to call you guys.
Right.
So all they care about is, well, geez, did it cost $1 million or $1,010,000? That's what they seem to focus on, But that's why you guys as the professionals have to make the case of, you know what, if we need to spend an extra $200,000 or $300,000 because the equipment does something that we needed to do, you make the case and we spend the money if that's what we have to do. So, like I said, I think this one's, I'm chalking it up to a learning experience. I think probably you guys did it the way you've always done it in the past, which is, that's what you used to do. We're trying to do things a little differently than maybe the way things were done before. You guys aren't used to that. And it's just, so I think there was a communication issue. And I think,
Well, I'll take the hit on that because it's all new to me. And I'm learning as I'm going.
There was a lot of turnover, and there wasn't a council person on the fire board for years.
Mike Delori was.
Mike was on, but
Right, Mike was more recent, and prior to that, it's been a while, yes.
So this again is all new to us, and we all have to work together. Safety is probably one of my primary concerns, and as long as we have this process in place again, now with the other equipment that's coming up, we have these discussions, let's move forward.
yeah, I mean, this is no different than the bunker gear we just voted on. I've been hearing about bunker gear for 2 years. In the past, we've always waited till it disintegrates to buy new stuff. Or with the trucks, we wait till the things have fallen apart, to buy them. What we're trying to do now is almost have like a management plan for the equipment where, we buy whatever, 20 cents or 15 cents a bunker gear.
and that's what we're in the process of doing.
We're trying to change our thinking so we just don't wait till things have fallen apart. So you guys have the equipment you need to be able to do your jobs because, quite frankly, I don't ever want to have to hear somebody say somebody got hurt or even worse because they didn't have the equipment, the right equipment. That's unacceptable to me. So, it's a little bit of shifting our thinking from the way we've done things in the past. I think it's good. Some people may not like it because maybe the old way was a little easier, but, we're trying to make sure, again, given that we're $500 million in the hole in the city, we have to make sure we're spending the money correctly. So,
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. And with that said, the other ladder truck will be coming up soon, so we'll start preparing for that. The next, yes, the ambulance first. Next 2 years, maybe for the ladder truck.
So let me ask this question real quick. You got to do the ambulance. So you're going to do the ambulance at your next meeting so the council can hear exactly how you did the ambulance versus here, seeing it in writing and going back.
Correct. Well, yes, the board here had gotten copies of the specs for the ambulance, which we were going to discuss amongst ourselves to make sure we were good with, and then we'll do the same thing next month, and we'll meet and go through everything. You'll have advanced knowledge of everything. We can discuss it again, and then be on the same page.
I mean, that's why I asked you last night about the engine. You know, should we anticipate that we're gonna have to replace an engine every 3 years?
No, again, I think this is more of a fluke with that engine than anything else.
Well, the reason I asked that question is if that's the case, if we're gonna burn through an engine every 3 years, but the chassis is still good, we need to start building that into our budgets.
Absolutely.
That every 3 years, we're gonna have to throw a new engine in these things. You know, and which is something that, again.
It's a lot cheaper than replacing a whole thing, sure.
Right, the city didn't do that. Before, the city dealt with stuff as it happened, you know, it was crisis management. And we're trying to get away from that, so we're trying to spread the costs out, so we're not getting clobbered all at once with things. Now, fire truck, obviously, you can't do that, because it's, you know, you only purchase one, like I said.
Well, we could have, it should have been purchased a few years ago.
Or, like I said, you could have a lockbox, where you put a certain amount in each year dedicated to new fire trucks.
I'll take it.
That's another option. But, you know, that's the different thinking we're trying to, you know, use here on how to make this better, so you guys don't have to wait till things are falling apart to come and say, I really need this now.
But you've been operating that way because of the dysfunction of the council. That's why, and we're saying that model that's not how the council's gonna work anymore.
And
Forward thinking and strategic, and therefore that means more work up front.
we do appreciate that, and just a little history, and Brian, who mentioned before, he's in a little over 40 years. Brian came in a year after me, and when we came in, you talk about bunker gear, we had to share gear with other people. So Brian had to share a helmet.
I had to steal a helmet because somebody did not show up to a call.
So things have gotten better, and anything we can do to make the process better and not always be in crisis management is much better for everybody.
We're doing everything together, making it a lot more effective, streamlined.
I shouldn't be scrounging for equipment.
So I just have, maybe it might be the final question. Scott, perhaps you're best to answer this. With grants from the National Fire Association, International Fire, acronyms are out of my head on fire today. Can we ask for those?
We have, and just so you know, what we've been doing is, and the actual volunteer fire department has been paying a grant writer. And just this year, we got awarded $133,000 for new radios. Even though, like, the volunteers put in for it, some of the radios are going to the career firefighters. We're replacing all our radios that are outdated and no longer serviced by Motorola. I had gone to the city previously to try to work it out to buy them over a 2-year period, and what happened is then they cut that in half. So it was counterproductive. We put in for the grant and got it. The year before, we got a grant for all new cardiac monitors for all the ambulances, including the career ambulance and engine. So we do put in for those grants, and we are successful. Correct. And there is a company we use, the volunteer fire department pays them, and they write the grant for us. And they specialize in these FEMA assistance to firefighter grants, the AFG grants.
Just unfortunately, though, we're not guaranteed every year to get something. if whatever we do, we take advantage of it, and we'll take what we can get, but not always going to get it.
Every year, that pool of money gets a little smaller.
So do you gift that to the city? That equipment? Yeah, they're 501c3, gets the grant money. So they have to gift it to the city, so the city owns it.
Right, we actually buy the whatever the grant was for. And then that equipment is then turned over to the fire department.
So that's on our books.
All right, we can talk to Rich Berrios to,
Just one question. So, like you said, there's probably the ladder truck's going to be coming up, maybe the pumper, ambulances. Is the thought process, like, let's say we wind up with this Pierce truck, is that to start standardizing the fleet?
We would, of course, we would like to. All the engines are standardized, they're all Ferraris. Our ambulances, 3 out of 4 are standardized, they're all PL custom, and we're continuing to go on with that to keep everything the same. With the next ladder truck, we will attempt to do the same.
So, the garage, if they're working on it, or whoever's working on it, well, I don't know if the garage works on it, we just send it right to the fire at it. Obviously, there's probably some benefit in that.
Absolutely.
What I was talking to, I know earlier about is that the city has changed over the past 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, and is going to change even more over the next 5 years and 10 years. So in accordance with that, what I would like to see is a firefighter strategic plan and vision of what they think the city is going to look like in working with Donna and her team, the rest of her team rather, to say that if the population of the city is going to be X and the buildings are going to be Y and they're going to be taller and we're going to be more dense. Therefore, this is the fleet that we need.
Absolutely.
So you work it backwards. So really, I don't even want to buy any more equipment until I have that vision, until I get a report on that vision.
Well,
Because I
if we could just agree to buy this ladder truck before that, I'll be very happy.
No, I'm for the ladder truck, but I'm saying that we need to take a hard look at what the city is gonna look like, and then work from there to see what equipment we need.
Absolutely.
And if we don't have that, without that, I don't really feel that I'm doing my responsibility to make sure that we're fulfilling our fiduciary responsibility and protecting you. So, and that could mean staffing as well.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Agree with the additions that Lucille recommended?
Yeah, I mean, he maintained the fleet of the city of New York, so if he says it's all good, I mean, like I said, we had everything in there to cut costs originally.
Right, when we met with him, he told us at the end of the meeting, it was a great truck. He liked it, he thought it was good, just that we should add these additional things to make it better.
Right.
Well, the issue is, like you said, you guys change the tires, things, and try to save costs. That you gotta find that sweet spot of, okay, saving, but not saving to the point where it's detrimental to your purchase, that it's gonna have a shorter life.
Well, no, I mean,
That's because you've been dealing with the council that walks like a limp. So if you're walking with the council that has a limp, you're gonna do the pricing with the limp. Now we're saying you're doing with the council that wants best practices, strategic vision, responsible bid, with the work. You don't have to automatically cut costs. You should come in with your, best and final.
Okay, we will. Anyone else? Okay.